to check test 3, transport across the membrane. Now this is the complete version now that we have investigated more about osmosis and introduced you to what active transport is. So question 1, the movement of molecules in or out of the cell can be passive or active, can be by passive or active transport. Describe one difference between passive and active transport. So the words passive and active here are probably what you want to underline. Now, if something's active, if you're active, you might be running about, you might be using energy, so that is what you need to link it to. If something's active, it's using energy, and if something's passive, it's sort of sitting there, it's not really expending or using any energy. So for this one here, you were looking for passive transport does not require any energy, whereas active transport does, or vice versa. Okay, question 2. 4 cylinders of potato tissue are weighed and placed into a salt solution of different concentrations. So you can see the 4 different ones here, A, B, C, D. They were then reweighed after an hour, and these are the results. In which salt solution would most potato cells be plasmolysed? Now, for this question, you want to underline plasmolysed or highlight it. So plasmolysed, you should be linking with the fact that the water is going to be moving out of the plant cell in order for it to be plasmolysed. So it's moving out, and therefore it is becoming this plasmolysed state. So let's look here. The only ones that the water was moving out, you could see, was A and B, because they have their mass has gotten less, so their mass has decreased. But because it says with most potato cells, you're looking for the one that decreased in the most mass, and that was going to be A, because that decreased in 3, whereas B decreased in 0.6. 3 is the feature of the cell membrane, which allowed only some substances into the cell. So for this question, the movement of only some substances, so it's a feature of the cell membrane. Now, feature of the cell membrane, if you remember the definition of what the cell membrane actually is a phospholipid bilayer impregnated with proteins, and it's semi-permeable. So semi-permeable or selectively permeable is what you're looking for here. So you're looking for selectively permeable or semi-permeable here. Also, you could have included, you could have talked a bit about the structure of the membrane. So the fact that it's the lipids, the phospholipids that are only allowing only some molecules into the cell or some substances into the cell, or you could have talked about the proteins. So if you described the structures that were present to allow only some molecules to enter the cell through the membrane, then that would have got you the mark also. Number 4, this one was a bit more difficult. There was quite a lot of information here. So graph shows concentrations of ions in single-celled organism. Single-celled organism you can see over here, like a paramecium, amoeba, that sort of thing. And it's looking at seawater surrounding it. Use the graph to identify which of the following statements is correct. My advice here would be just take each part at a time. Just take each one of these statements at a time. Don't try and flick through them and try and answer this quickly. Just take them one at a time. So what you had to do to start with was to look at the first one. Sodium ions will move into the organism by active transport. If it's moving in by active transport, it's going from a low to a high concentration. Is it going from a low to a high? Move into the organism? No, it's not, because it's going from a high to a low, as you can see there with the bars. B, sodium ions will move out of the organism by diffusion. So diffusion, moving out, going from a high to low. So if it's moving out, going from a high to low, nope, it's going from low to high, that's not right. Potassium ions will move out the organism by active transport. So moving out, going from low to high. So the organism going from high to low, nope, that doesn't match up either. Potassium ions will move into the organism by active transport. So into the organism, so that's moving in, and if we're going from low to high, as you can see, going from the C into the organism, that is from low to high. It should have been D. For question 5, as I said, paramecium, single-celled organism. We're looking at water concentrations this time. So the water outside the paramecium is of higher concentration, and therefore diffusion moves the water into the cell. Name the movement of water. So when water is being moved, and it's being moved by diffusion, the example of the passive transport that's particular and specific to water is osmosis. So if it's anything to do with water and it's looking at transport of molecules, anything to do with water being transported, it's going to be looking at osmosis. So this movement of water is osmosis. Name a structure present in the cell wall that's present in the plant cell, which prevents it from bursting when full of water. Even there, I did it there. I associated it with the cell wall straight away. So it should be the cell wall, yeah. So that gives it the structure on the outside and stops it from bursting. So the cell membrane, it prevents it from pushing out and then bursting and releasing the cell contents. Moving on to question 7. Glucose molecules in low concentration in the kidney have to be moved into the bloodstream, whereas a higher concentration, they're moving from low to high concentration. Is it to do with water? No, it's not. It's not osmosis. Is it to do with diffusion? It's going from a low to high. Nope, that's high to low. It's going from a low to high, and it says passive transport. Nope, that's from high to low, and from a low to high concentration, active transport. It requires energy. It should have been D. Question 8. So this should look familiar. So we've got two cells, an animal cell, a plant cell, and at the top you've got what's happened to the animal cell, at the bottom what's happened to the plant cell. A. Identify the animal cell shown which had been placed in a salt solution of higher salt concentration than its cell contents. If it's a higher salt concentration, it means it's a lower water concentration. So if it's being placed in somewhere with an extremely low water concentration, you should be putting together that because of osmosis, the water's going to move out of the cell. Now it says an animal cell, so you should highlight that. So which one here shows the animal cell that water has moved out of? So it's gotten smaller. You're looking for the one that's gotten smaller, and it should have been 2. As you can see, that the cell contents it's gotten less, and the cell membrane is shrunken, and the whole cell is actually shrunk as a result. So it should be 2. State the terms you use to describe this condition of cell 6. Now, all the time you can see here that cell 6, the vacuole's gotten smaller, and also the cytoplasm has come away from the cell membrane. You can see the cell structure is still solid, it's still rigid, because it's got that cell wall, but it's in this plasmalized state. Plasmalized. That should have been for B. For C, cells 3 and 4 have been placed in solutions with the same concentration. Explain why the results observed were different. 3 and 4 needed to connect it. One was an animal cell, one was a plant cell, and you should have said that the plant cell contains a cell wall, and this cell, whereas the animal cell does not contain a cell wall, and this structure prevents the cell from bursting when water enters. Now question 9, between which cells and what direction will water be transported via osmosis? The question is looking at solute concentration. Solute concentration, that's anything, as I've written here, that is not water. If the solute concentration is high, you can imagine this being like like this question back here, a higher salt concentration. That would be a high solute concentration. So between which cells is osmosis going to take place? So you're looking for a cell that's got a high water concentration moving to a cell with a lower water concentration. And the only one that it could have been was moving from cell 3 to cell 1. Because 0.6% solute concentration, that means you can imagine to make it up to 1, that's 0.4% water. This one's got 0.2% water, this one's got 0.3% water. That's moving from a high water concentration to a lower water concentration. It was none of the other ones. Should have been D there. 10. Name the process which sodium ions move into this cell. So let's look at the table. It's giving us the information. Sodium ions moving into the cell. So you can, in the exam, you could actually draw an arrow there if it's moving into the cell. So it's going down a concentration gradient, moving from a high concentration to a low. And what process do we know that moves molecules from a high concentration to a low concentration? It has to be diffusion. It has to be diffusion for this question. Potassium ions move by active transport, so it's told us they move by active transport. Using the information in the table, complete the diagram to show which direction that the potassium ions are moving. So they move by active transport. Look at the table. So potassium, active transport, moving from a low concentration to a high concentration. So you can draw the arrow again. It's moving from outside to inside the cell because it's moving from a low to a high. So the arrow should have been pointing inwards and have the head of the arrow pointing to this second potassium ion here. C, name the type of molecule found in the cell membrane which is involved in moving ions by active transport. It's of course these proteins that are impregnated, that are stuck into the membrane, and they're allowing the molecules to be carried over the membrane. This obviously requires energy, so the proteins require energy to do this process, but it should have been the proteins that did this. all in all, you guys did awesome this week, and you will get your personalized feedback posted to you on Microsoft Teams. So keep it up, guys. Hope you're doing well and safe.